I stood frozen in the doorway of our cramped apartment as my husband Jake slammed his fist against the kitchen counter, hard enough to rattle the baby bottles drying on the rack. The paperwork from the adoption agency lay scattered across the table between us, like shrapnel from an explosion. "You went behind my back," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You actually told them we'd sign." I bounced our 3-month-old daughter Emma against my shoulder, her tiny fists clutching my shirt as she wailed. My breasts ached with milk, my head pounded from lack of sleep, and somewhere across town, in a foster home I'd never even seen, our twin boys were being tucked into beds by strangers who wanted to make it permanent. "I told them we'd think about it," I said, keeping my voice steady even as my hands trembled. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Jake moved toward me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Contempt. "Because Linda texted me today, said you've been having conversations about the open adoption for weeks, planning visits, discussing holidays." My stomach dropped. I hadn't known Linda, the foster mother, had his number. I'd specifically asked her to go through me. "Jake, please, just listen." "I've been listening." He grabbed the papers from the table, and I noticed his hands were shaking too. "I've been listening while you convince yourself that giving away our sons is somehow the right thing to do, that we're not good enough parents, that they're better off without us." Emma's crying intensified, and I felt the familiar panic rising in my chest. The same panic I'd felt 3 months ago during that disastrous CPS visit when all 3 babies had been screaming simultaneously, and I'd looked at Jake with tears streaming down my face and whispered, "I can't do this." "That's not what this is about," I said, raising my voice to be heard over Emma. "You work 60 hours a week at the plant. I'm alone with her all day. And when we get the twins back in February, I'll have 3 babies under 1 year old. 3 babies with feeding tubes and therapy appointments and—" "Our babies," Jake interrupted. "Our responsibility. We made them, Kayla. You don't just give up when things get hard." I felt something inside me crack. "Don't you dare tell me about giving up. I'm the one who spent 4 months in that hospital. I'm the one who had to learn how to work their G-tubes while you were at work. I'm the one CPS grilled about medical neglect because we couldn't afford phones and missed 1 surgery call." "I know." His voice softened slightly. "I was there too. I saw how hard you fought for them." "Then why can't you see that I'm still fighting for them?" I moved closer, Emma finally quieting to a whimper against my shoulder. "The Hendersons have resources we don't have. A house with a yard, flexible schedules, experience with special needs kids. They can give Tyler and Mason everything we can't." "They're not the parents," Jake said flatly. "We are. I am." He pulled out his phone and turned it toward me. On the screen was a photo Linda had sent him, one I'd seen before. Tyler and Mason in matching blue onesies, lying on a soft carpet with developmental toys scattered around them. They looked healthy, happy. The G-tube sites were barely visible under their clothes. "Look at them," Jake said. "You see happy babies who need better parents. I see my sons who need to come home." I looked away. I couldn't stare at that photo anymore. It had become both my comfort and my torture. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I shifted Emma to my other shoulder and pulled it out. A text from Linda. "Hi, honey. Just wanted to check in. The boys had a great day at physical therapy. Mason is getting so close to rolling over. Also, David and I talked, and we're ready to move forward whenever you are. We know this is hard, but we promise we'll love them like our own. Call me?" Jake watched my face. "That's her, isn't it? What does she want now?" I shoved the phone back in my pocket. Nothing, just an update. "Kayla." He stepped closer, his expression hardening again. "What did she say?" "It doesn't matter." "Show me the phone." "No." We stood there in silence, Emma dozing off against my shoulder, both of us breathing hard. Outside our apartment window, I could hear kids playing in the parking lot. Normal kids with normal parents who hadn't delivered twins at 23 weeks, who hadn't watched their babies fight for every breath in plastic incubators, who hadn't had their family ripped apart by a system that was supposed to help. "I met with a lawyer today," Jake said quietly. The words hit me like ice water. What? A family lawyer. Free consultation at the community center. He sat down heavily at the table. I wanted to know our options. If you try to go through with this adoption without my consent. My mouth went dry. Jake, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. He looked up at me, and now I saw the fear beneath his anger. I talked to her for an hour, learned a lot about custody rights and parental consent. You want to know what she told me? I didn't answer. I couldn't.
She said that if CPS recommends it, if the foster parents have bonded with the kids, if one parent is willing but the other isn't, the court usually sides with what's in the best interest of the child, not the parents. He laughed bitterly. So even though I'm their father, even though I've done everything CPS asked, I could lose my sons because my wife thinks strangers would do a better job. That's not fair. None of this is fair. He stood up so fast his chair scraped against the linoleum. You know what else the lawyer told me? That if I fight this and win, if I block the adoption and get the boys back, you could leave, walk away, and then I'd be a single father of 3 kids, 2 with special needs, making $14 an hour.
The truth of it hung between us, ugly and undeniable. I haven't decided anything, I said weakly. I'm just exploring options. No, Jake picked up one of the papers from the table. I recognized the letterhead of the adoption agency. You're doing more than exploring. This is a preliminary consent form. It has your signature on it. My cheeks burned. I'd signed it 2 weeks ago, during a meeting with Linda and David, that I'd told Jake was a therapy appointment. It's preliminary, I repeated. It doesn't mean anything. It just starts the process. The process of giving away our children? Emma stirred against me, making little mewling sounds. I needed to feed her soon. I needed to sleep. I needed everything to stop spinning out of control. I'm going to my mom's, I said suddenly. Tonight. I need space to think. You're not taking Emma. I stared at him. Excuse me? If you're seriously considering abandoning 2 of our kids, I'm not letting you disappear with the 3rd. Jake moved between me and the door. Your mom lives 2 hours away. I have work tomorrow. I need to know where my daughter is. She's breastfeeding, Jake. She needs me. Then don't leave. We locked eyes. Emma began to cry again, her hungry wails filling the small apartment. I felt trapped, suffocated by the walls closing in, and the weight of decisions I wasn't qualified to make. Fine, I said. I'll sleep on the couch. Kayla, I said fine. I pushed past him into the living room, our living room, that was somehow supposed to accommodate 3 cribs and a lifetime of medical equipment. The space felt impossibly small. Everything felt impossibly small. As I settled onto the couch to feed Emma, I heard Jake in the kitchen, his voice low as he made a phone call. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. I knew he was calling his brother, or his dad, or maybe even the CPS caseworker. Everyone choosing sides. Everyone preparing for war. And our sons, sweet Tyler and Mason, with their feeding tubes and their developmental delays and their bright blue eyes that looked just like Jake's, sleeping peacefully in someone else's home while their parents tore each other apart over what love was supposed to look like. The next morning, I woke to find Jake already gone for his shift at the plant. A note on the coffee maker said he'd be home at 6 and we needed to talk. No love you, no signature. Just facts. Emma needed changing, feeding, more changing. The routine kept me moving, even as my mind spun. Around 10, Linda called. I almost didn't answer, but she'd just keep trying, and part of me craved the calm rationality of her voice, so different from Jake's raw emotion. Kayla, I'm so glad you picked up. Linda's warmth radiated even through the phone. Listen, I know things must be tense right now. David and I want you to know we're not trying to pressure you. We just love these boys so much. I closed my eyes. I know you do. We were thinking maybe you and Jake could come for dinner this weekend. See the boys in their home environment, see how well they're doing. Sometimes seeing it makes the decision easier. Linda, Jake doesn't even know I signed that preliminary form. A pause. Oh, honey, I assumed you'd discussed it. When I texted him about... You shouldn't have texted him. I'm sorry. She sounded genuinely contrite. I thought you two were on the same page. I just wanted him to feel included. Included in giving away his children? Right. I need to go, I said. Emma's fussing. Emma was actually sleeping peacefully, but I couldn't stay on the phone another second. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of our apartment, holding my sleeping daughter. The photo of the twins that Jake had shown me kept replaying in my mind. They looked so content, so cared for, but there was another memory too. Earlier, before CPS got involved, I'd gone to visit them in the NICU, and Tyler had wrapped his impossibly tiny fingers around my thumb. The nurse had smiled and said, "He knows his mama." My phone buzzed again. This time, it was from a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Chen, this is Angela Reeves from Child Protective Services. I need to schedule a home visit for this Friday at 2 p.m. This is not optional. We've received concerning information about your case that requires immediate attention. Please confirm receipt of this message." My blood turned to ice. Concerning information? What information? I called back immediately. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I left a stammered message asking what she meant, my voice shaking. Jake. It had to be Jake. He'd said he talked to a lawyer. Had he also talked to CPS? Told them I was trying to give the boys up? Would that make me look unfit? No, Jake wouldn't do that. He was angry, but he wouldn't sabotage our case. Would he? I spent the day in a fog of anxiety, playing worst-case scenarios on loop. By the time Jake got home, I was vibrating with nervous energy. "We need to talk about CPS," I said before he'd even set down his lunchbox. He froze. "What about CPS?" "They called. Emergency home visit on Friday. They said they received concerning information." I searched his face for guilt. "Do you know anything about that?" Number 1. He looked genuinely confused. "I didn't call them." "But you talked to a lawyer." "Yeah, about custody rights, not about reporting you to CPS." Jake set down his lunchbox slowly. "Wait, you think I'd try to make you look like an unfit mother? I don't know what to think anymore." "Jesus, Kayla." He ran his hands through his hair. "I'm trying to keep our family together, not destroy it further. If CPS thinks there's a problem, maybe it's because Linda or David said something." That stopped me cold. Why would they do that? Because they want the boys, and if we look dysfunctional and unable to provide a stable home, the judge might terminate our rights faster, make it easier for them to adopt. The logic was sound, but terrifying. I'd trusted Linda. I told her things, confided my fears and doubts. "She wouldn't," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Call her, ask her directly." So I did. Right there in front of Jake, I pulled out my phone and called Linda. She answered on the first ring, cheerful as always. "Linda, did you or David contact CPS about us?" The pause was too long. "Why would you ask that?" "Because they called about an emergency visit and mentioned consigning information." "Oh, honey, we didn't call them exactly, but David did mention to the caseworker during our last check-in that there seemed to be some disagreement between you and Jake about the adoption. We thought they should know, for the boys' sake. We didn't mean to cause trouble." My hand tightened on the phone. "What did you tell them?" "Just that you seemed open to adoption, but Jake was resistant, and that there was tension in your marriage. The caseworker said it was important information. Look, we're all supposed to be honest with CPS, right? It's about what's best for Tyler and Mason." I felt Jake watching me, reading the horror on my face. "I have to go," I managed, and ended the call. "She reported us," I said flatly. Jake's jaw clenched. "What did she say?" I repeated the conversation. With each word, I watched his expression darken. "They're manipulating the system," he said. "They know if CPS thinks we're unstable, it helps their case. Kayla, these people aren't the saints you think they are. They want our kids, and they're willing to sabotage us to get them." I wanted to argue, to defend Linda and David, but the evidence was right there. They'd gone to CPS. They'd painted us as dysfunctional. And I'd helped them by signing that form, by having secret meetings, by telling Linda things I hadn't even told my husband. I'm such an idiot, I whispered. No, you're exhausted and overwhelmed, and they took advantage. Jake moved closer. But now you need to decide. Are you with me, or are you with them? It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Either we fight to get our sons back, together, or we give up. There's no middle ground anymore. Emma started crying from the bedroom. I went to get her, my mind reeling. Everything I'd thought I understood about the situation had shifted. Linda and David weren't just loving foster parents. They were competitors, adversaries. When I came back out with Emma, Jake was on his phone again. I'm calling the caseworker back, he said. We need to get ahead of whatever Linda told them. Jake, wait. But he was already talking, his voice professional and calm, as he explained to Angela Reeves that yes, he and his wife had discussed adoption, but they had mutually decided to move forward with reunification. That any reports of marital discord or exaggerated, that they were a united front. I listened to him lie smoothly, professionally, protecting us, protecting our family. When he hung up, he looked at me. I told her we'd be ready for the home visit, that we wanted to accelerate the reunification timeline as possible. But I haven't decided. Decide now. His voice wasn't angry anymore, just tired, defeated. Because if you're not all in, I need to know. I need to figure out how to do this alone. I looked down at Emma, then at the empty space where 2 more cribs should be. I thought about Tyler's fingers wrapped around my thumb, Mason's eyes trying to focus on my face, the way the NICU nurse had said he knows his mama. I'm in, I heard myself say. I'm all in. Jake's shoulders dropped with relief. You mean it? Did I? I wasn't sure, but I knew I couldn't let Linda and David win by playing dirty. I couldn't let them take my sons because I'd been too weak to fight. I mean it, I said, stronger this time. We get the boys back. We figure it out together. For the first time in weeks, Jake smiled. It didn't reach his eyes, but it was something. Okay then, he said, let's get ready for that home visit. We're going to show them the most stable, capable family they've ever seen. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. We cleaned the apartment until it gleamed, bought a 3rd crib on credit and crammed it into our bedroom alongside Emma's. Made a detailed schedule showing how we'd manage 3 babies with Jake's work hours. I even called my supervisor and arranged to work from home part-time after my maternity leave ended, something I'd been too proud to ask for before. By Friday at 2 p.m., we were as ready as we'd ever be. Angela Reeves arrived with a clipboard and an expression that revealed nothing. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, she said, shaking our hands. Thank you for accommodating this visit on short notice. Of course, Jake said smoothly. We're always happy to cooperate. She walked through our apartment noting everything. The cribs, the feeding supplies we'd kept for when the boys came home, the calendar on the wall marked with therapy appointments. I understand there's been some discussion of adoption, Angela said carefully, sitting at our kitchen table. There was a brief conversation, I said, keeping my voice steady. The foster parents expressed interest, and I explored it as one option, but Jake and I have discussed it thoroughly, and we're committed to reunification. Mrs. Chen, you signed a preliminary consent form. My heart stopped. How did she know that? Linda must have told her. Or maybe the adoption agency reported it. I did, I admitted. I was overwhelmed and scared, but I didn't understand what I was signing. I've since withdrawn that consent. Have you formally withdrawn it with the agency? I'm calling them this afternoon. Angela made a note. Mr. Chen, how do you feel about your wife signing that form? Jake glanced at me, and I saw him make a calculation. I was upset initially, but Kayla's been under tremendous stress. She delivered our sons at 23 weeks, spent months in the NICU with them, and now she's home with a newborn while trying to meet all of CPS's requirements. I understand why she felt overwhelmed. What matters is we're united now. Another note. And if the boys come home, how will you manage 3 infants? We walked her through our plan. My work from home arrangement, Jake's parents coming to help 2 days a week, the therapy schedule we'd coordinated, Emma's feeding routine that was finally becoming predictable. The boys have special needs, Angela said. G-tubes, developmental delays, multiple appointments per week. That's on top of normal infant care. Mrs. Chen, do you feel capable of handling this? Every instinct screamed to say no, to admit I was terrified, but I looked at Jake, at the desperation in his eyes, and I said, yes, it will be challenging, but yes, they're my sons. I can do this. Angela spent another 30 minutes asking questions, watching how Jake and I interacted, how we cared for Emma. Finally, she packed up her clipboard. I'll be submitting my report to the judge, she said. I want to be transparent with you both. The foster parents have expressed strong interest in adoption, and they have the resources and experience to provide excellent care. However, CPS's goal is always reunification when possible. If you can demonstrate stability and capability, there's no reason the boys can't come home on schedule. What about what Linda told you? I asked. About us being unstable? Angela's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Henderson is attached to the boys. It's natural for foster parents to advocate for what they think is best, but ultimately, the decision isn't theirs. It's yours and the court's. My advice? Stay focused. Stay united. Don't give anyone ammunition to question your commitment. After she left, Jake and I collapsed on the couch. Emma was down for a nap, and the apartment felt eerily quiet. We did it, I said. First step, Jake corrected. Now you need to call the adoption agency. Right, I had promised Angela I would. I found the number in my contacts and dialed before I could lose my nerve. The woman who answered was professional, but cold when I explained I wanted to withdraw my preliminary consent. Mrs. Chen, the Hendersons have been very clear about their wishes. They've invested significant emotional energy in your sons. I understand that, but they're my sons. I have the right to change my mind. Of course. But I should inform you that the Hendersons are prepared to pursue adoption even without your consent if they believe it's in the children's best interest. They have an attorney. The threat was clear. Fight us, and we'll fight back. That's their choice, I said, my voice shaking, but I'm formally withdrawing any preliminary consent I provided. Please note that in your records. After I hung up, I told Jake about the attorney threat. Let them try, he said grimly. We're the biological parents. We've met every CPS requirement. They have no legal standing to challenge us. But I wasn't so sure. Over the next week, things escalated. Linda started calling multiple times a day, her cheerful tone replaced by something more desperate. She sent photos of the boys constantly. Look how happy they are, her text said. Are you sure you want to disrupt their stability? David called Jake at work, trying to man him into reconsidering. Think about what's best for Tyler and Mason, not your ego. Their attorney sent a letter to our caseworker questioning our fitness as parents. They brought up the medical neglect allegation from the NICU, spun it as evidence of our inability to prioritize our children's needs. They're trying to bury us, I said, staring at the letter Angela had forwarded to us. Then we fight harder, Jake said. Our court date was set for mid-February, a full hearing to determine if the boys would return to us or if termination of parental rights would be considered. The weeks leading up to it were brutal. Jake picked up extra shifts to pay for a lawyer. I ran on 3 hours of sleep, caring for Emma while preparing our case. Linda and David's attacks became more aggressive. They found out about a credit card we'd maxed out buying baby supplies and questioned our financial stability. They highlighted that our apartment was small, implying the boys deserved better. They're right, I said one night after another sleepless evening with Emma. Maybe we can't give them what the Hendersons can. Stop, Jake said sharply. We're not doing this again. We love those boys. That matters more than a bigger house or more money. Does it? I was too tired to filter my thoughts. Love doesn't pay for therapy. Love doesn't make space magically appear. Love is everything, Jake interrupted. It's the only thing. And if you can't see that, maybe you shouldn't be in that courtroom. His words stung, but they also woke something in me. He was right. I'd been so focused on logistics and limitations that I'd forgotten the fundamental truth. Tyler and Mason were ours. Not because we were perfect parents, but because we'd created them, fought for them, loved them from their first breath. I'll be in that courtroom, I said quietly, and I'll fight like hell to bring our sons home. The morning of the hearing, I dressed Emma in the nicest outfit she owned and put on the one professional dress that still fit my post-pregnancy body. Jake wore the suit he'd bought at Goodwill, slightly too big in the shoulders, but clean and pressed. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Linda and David sat on one side with their attorney, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit. They didn't look at us. Our lawyer, a young guy named Marcus, who was doing this mostly pro bono, looked nervous but determined. Just be honest, he coached us. Show the judge you're committed. The judge was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who'd probably seen 1,000 cases like ours. She reviewed the files, asked questions, listened to testimony. Angela Reeves spoke about our progress, our home visit, our demonstrated commitment. The Hendersons' attorney painted a picture of two overwhelmed young parents who'd already proven they couldn't handle their children's needs. They missed a crucial surgery notification, she said. They signed preliminary adoption papers. Mrs. Chen has expressed multiple times that she feels incapable of managing 3 infants. The boys have thrived in the Henderson home. Why disrupt that? Then it was our turn. Marcus called Jake first. My husband, who usually kept his emotions locked tight, broke down on the stand. Those are my sons, he said, his voice cracking. I know we're not perfect. I know we don't have much, but I think about them every day, every single day. And the thought of them growing up thinking I didn't want them, that I gave up on them, it destroys me. I watched the judge's expression soften slightly. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand on shaking legs, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Marcus asked gentle questions about my doubts, my fears, my conversations with Linda. I answered honestly. I was scared. I am scared. But fear doesn't mean I don't love my sons. It means I want to do right by them, and I truly believe that raising them myself, with Jake, is the right thing. The Hendersons' attorney cross-examined me. Mrs. Chen, you signed legal documents consenting to adoption. You had multiple conversations planning the details. Doesn't that indicate your true feelings? It indicates I was drowning, I said, and someone threw me a life raft, but it was the wrong raft. My place is with my children, all 3 of them. Even if you can't provide what they need, I can provide what they need most, their mother. The judge asked her own questions about our finances, our support system, our plans for managing the boys' medical needs. We answered everything as honestly as we could. Finally, the judge sat back. I'm going to take a short recess to review the materials and make my decision. Those 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Jake held my hand so tight it hurt. Emma slept in the carrier on my chest, oblivious to the fact that her brother's futures were being decided. When the judge returned, her expression was unreadable. This is a difficult case, she began. The Hendersons clearly love Tyler and Mason and have provided excellent care. However, CPS's primary goal is reunification with biological parents when safe and appropriate. Mr. and Mrs. Chen have met every requirement set forth by CPS. They have stable housing, employment, and a clear plan for managing their son's needs. While I have concerns about the strain 3 infants will place on this young family, those concerns are not sufficient to terminate parental rights. Therefore, I am ordering that Tyler and Mason Chen be returned to their parents on a trial basis, with continued CPS monitoring for 6 months. The Hendersons will transition the boys over the next 2 weeks. I heard Linda sob behind us. David's voice, angry and disbelieving. Their attorney arguing something I couldn't process. Jake pulled me into his arms. We'd won. Our sons were coming home. The next 2 weeks were tense. Linda and David dragged out the transition, canceling handoff appointments and claiming the boys were sick. Finally, Angela Reeves had to supervise the final transfer herself. We met at the CPS office. Linda carried Tyler, David carried Mason. Both boys had grown so much since I'd last held them. They were 7 months old now, chunky and alert, tracking movement with their eyes. Linda was crying openly. Please, she said to me one last time, Please reconsider. We can give them everything. So can we, I said, and took Tyler from her arms. He felt heavier than I remembered, solid and real. His blue eyes found mine, and something in my chest unlocked. This was my son, my baby, and he was coming home. Jake took Mason, and we walked out of that office as a family of 5. The first weeks were exactly as hard as I'd feared. Emma, Tyler, and Mason all needed attention constantly. The boys' feeding tubes required careful maintenance. Mason had physical therapy twice a week. Tyler was behind on his milestones and needed extra support. But we managed. Jake's parents helped more than I'd expected. My mom drove up every weekend. We fell into a rhythm, chaotic and exhausting, but ours. 6 months later, CPS closed our case. Angela Reeves came for one final visit and found all 3 kids thriving. Emma was crawling. The boys were gaining weight and hitting benchmarks. Our apartment was still cramped, but it was full of love and laughter. You did it, Angela said. I'm proud of you both. After she left, Jake and I sat on the floor, surrounded by our children. Emma pulled herself up on the coffee table. Tyler grabbed at a toy. Mason babbled contentedly. Are you happy? Jake asked me. I looked around at our chaotic, messy, beautiful life. Exhausted, I admitted. But yes, happy. He kissed my forehead. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for not letting me, I said. We never heard from Linda and David again. Sometimes I wonder if they found another placement, if they eventually adopted a child who truly needed them. I hope they did. Despite everything, I think they would have been good parents. But Tyler and Mason didn't need them to be their parents. They had us. It took me a long time to forgive myself for those months of doubt, for the paperwork I'd signed, for the conversations I'd had about giving my sons away. Jake forgave me faster than I forgave myself. You were drowning, he said, echoing my own words from court, but you swam back to shore. That's what matters. Last week, the boys turned 2. We had a small party in our apartment with both sets of grandparents, Jake's brother, and a couple of friends. The place was packed, but it was perfect. Tyler took wobbly steps between the couch and the coffee table. Mason clapped along to the birthday song, his G-tube finally removed after months of working with a feeding therapist. Emma, now 2.5, helped them blow out candles. After everyone left and the kids were in bed, Jake and I cleaned up wrapping paper and cake crumbs. I have something to tell you, I said. I called the adoption agency last month, asked them to destroy all the paperwork I'd signed, make sure there's no record of me ever consenting. Jake stopped cleaning. Why now? Because I needed to be sure that part of our story was completely erased. The boys are going to have questions someday about CPS, about why they were in foster care. I want to be able to tell them the truth without that complication hanging over us. He pulled me close. The truth is, we fought for them. That's all they need to know. I leaned into his embrace, listening to the quiet sounds of our sleeping children through the thin walls. It wasn't the life I'd imagined when I'd first gotten pregnant. It was harder, messier, more complicated than anything I could have anticipated. But it was ours, built on the foundation of a fight we'd almost lost, but ultimately won together. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have made the same choice in that courtroom, even knowing how hard the road ahead would be?